Welcome back to Backstage Live at the Saturday Early Show. We're joined now by criminologist Casey Jordan. Thank you for joining us this morning to discuss the very latest on the Amanda Knox trial, something that we've all been following very closely for quite some time now. There could be a potential for a strong opportunity in the appeal here for Amanda Knox. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm actually impressed because like so many people, when I first heard about the case, I was like, well, of course she did it. As a criminologist, I know what 20-year-old girls are capable of, and it's totally contrary very often to her, the image of sweetness and light. And I was like, oh, they wouldn't be prosecuting her so vehemently unless it was all true. And then I finally stopped and read the evidence. And in fact, it's been flawed from the outset. The collection of it, the processing of it, the fact that the system is different and they don't have to show full reports like we do in the United States. And mostly, of course, you had this really overzealous prosecutor, Manini, who had this insane concept that it was all part of a satanic cult and no evidence for it other than he just likes the theory. And the picture that he painted at trial doesn't fit the forensics at all. And what trace evidence they say they have has now been proved by this independent panel to be inconclusive or too degenerated to be authentic, and there's too little of it to retest. So this is really great news for Amanda.
Let's back up for a moment. You'd mentioned flaws. I'd like to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the flaws that you've noticed.
Well, a few things. The knife, which they recovered at her boyfriend Raffaelle's house, never fit the imprint that was left by the murder weapon on the sheet. And they found this knife in, I guess, his kitchen, and they said it had Amanda's DNA on it. Well, Amanda had been dating him not terribly long, maybe 2 weeks, but she stayed at his apartment a lot. Maybe she took that knife out of the dish rack and put it in the drawer. Something as simple as touch DNA, sweat, little tiny skin cells could have been left on the handle of the knife. But if that knife had actually been used to kill Meredith, it would have had so much blood between the blade and the handle that you would have had to submerge it in bleach to get rid of every trace of Meredith's blood because there was no blood found on it. And that would have destroyed any of Amanda's DNA at the same time. So from the very beginning, just logical. I mean, introductory students to criminal justice would know this stuff, that you can't have a little bit of DNA of the killer and no DNA of the murder victim. It doesn't work.
And they've maintained that there was DNA, potentially Raphael's DNA, on Meredith's bra clasp?
Yes, the bra clasp that was left on the floor for 6 weeks. If you've seen footage, you saw that the video tape the police took of the crime scene shows it on the floor. And when I saw the video, I was horrified to see a CSI tech pick it up. Now, he had latex gloves on, but you never pick it up with your fingers because you could have other DNA on the outside of those gloves. You pick it up with tweezers, you put it in the bag. They're picking it up, they're holding it, they put it back on the floor, rephotograph it, and then they leave and forget to take it with them. So it sat on the floor of her apartment for 6 weeks before they came back, got it, processed it, found a trace of Raffaelle's DNA. Well, he was in that apartment a lot. A skin cell that was perhaps stuck on the bottom of a shoe could have gotten stuck to that bra clasp.
And at this point, they really can't retest the bra clasp.
Well, it was so trace in the beginning that it was such a trace amount, it was questionable in the first place. But then they stored it in a jar of liquid, which is never protocol for DNA. It doesn't go in liquid. It gets dried. It stays very properly stored in the right temperature. So now it can't be retested. And as far as I can tell, the bra clasp is out.
In terms of the Lifetime movie, it was a hot topic. The family was very concerned that this would really affect her opportunity for a real fresh new trial. Was there any indication that it has affected things negatively or positively in any way?
Well, to the extent that this case has always been tried in the courtroom of public opinion, the Lifetime movie did not help. It was full of factual flaws. You can get on the net and read the top 5 or 10 errors that were simply not based on fact, but were definitely part of the movie because it was meant to entertain, not educate. And I absolutely understand why Amanda and her family are incensed by the movie because it is inaccurate. At the same time, what probably got Amanda convicted in the first place was a mixture of overzealous prosecution, shoddy evidence, and public opinion. So the movie, if it keeps people believing that she really did sexually assault and cut this girl's throat as part of a satanic sexual orgy, which if you stop and think about it, is really a stretch, and it isn't supported by the evidence, then I think Amanda has every reason to think that movie has hurt her image.
Her parents, Amanda Knox's parents, have faced legal issues of their own in Italy. What is the status on that?
I think that that was really just a way of the Italian judicial system, as I love to say, giving them the smackdown. They are guests of Italy, and when in Rome, you do as the Romans. And it probably was not smart for them to be critical of the system because they're on Italian turf. And so by slapping them with the slander, by hitting them with this libel and saying, stop criticizing our system, they got control back. And if they're wise, they'll just back up, be quiet, not be critical, because for the first time we're seeing the Italian system actually work the way it probably should have in the first place. Let them save face, and they really might come out with a proper verdict this time. Again, I don't know if Amanda did it or not, but I know there's no evidence that really supports that conviction.
What would the prosecution have to do then at this point to prove she is guilty?
Well, I don't think they can at this point because they did it based on evidence, which they can't recreate. They can't introduce it. And the more we look into the evidence, the more we play the video of the way it was collected, the more we realize that it was simply not up to standard the way it was collected, processed, and presented to the court. And mostly, the theory that got her convicted, that whole satanic orgy thing, is not supported by the evidence. There would have been so much more DNA everywhere. There was tons of Meredith's blood, but no DNA from the killers. And really, Rudy, the guy the third party who's already serving his 30 years, most people agree that he probably is the sole perpetrator of this crime.
And alternately, what will the defense's strategy really be at this point?
Well, they're doing it. They are picking methodically and systematically through the evidence that was used to convict Amanda in the first place, and they're finding all the flaws with it. It doesn't help that Menini, the overzealous prosecutor, is also up on charges for abuse of office. So you have this going on. They just need to put Menini to the side and say, let's get rid of the prosecutor and let's be reasonable about this. Let's go through this line by line, report by report, find the flaws, and then reconsider whether or not the conviction was justified.
Bryce, do we have any questions from our chat room for Casey?
Yeah, Cool Jets would like to know if Amanda is found innocent, what kind of fallout could the Italian court system feel from that?
Well, you have to remember, Amanda might be in this situation to start with because she is a foreign girl. And to be honest, Raffaele, her boyfriend, who's an Italian national, will also be freed if Amanda is free. Both of their convictions are being looked at as they reprocess the evidence and go through this again on the appeal. So the fallout is going to be lessened because if it were only Amanda, there might be a lot of backlash from the public. But because an Italian national is involved as well, you've got a victory for their own. While it may be terrible that the American girl who may have been guilty goes back to America, I think that it's just going to dissipate. And that's really what should happen. If it looks like the Italian system is going to be under scrutiny and going to be criticized, you may not get the overturning of the verdict that the Knox family is looking for. Better to lay low, let justice grind away, and not do any more Lifetime movies after this.
Bryce, any other questions? Casey, it's always great having you on our show.
Always
Thank
fun to
you
be here.
so much.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
I will. Thanks.